Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about a very interesting device that is about to come on the market. But first, let's reminisce together about simpler times where it all began, when the first gaming laptop was released in 2011. And it was this guy right here. Well, not this guy, but Razer Blade. They introduced the first real gaming computer. A year later, I got my first gaming computer, but it was an Alienware 14 R2, which is this relic right here. It was cool looking. It would bring up conversations. Everyone was looking at it. I mean, I have not seen a better looking laptop so far. Not even today. But the hardware was not that good. It could play games, obviously, but most AAA games were not very playable. For example, Crysis 2 came out at that time, and I was barely able to play. I think I dropped to lower than 720p resolution to be able. The battery wouldn't last long, it would get really hot. Even if laptops today are getting less hot and are lighter, you still can't use them on your lap without risking burning your important parts. You can't certainly play holding it in one hand and playing with the other. That would be ridiculous. Who would even try to do that? You can't play in bed putting it on your lap. The trackpad is very responsive, but it's not responsive enough to game on it. So you'll always need a mouse, unless you're playing emulated retro games and you just use the arrow keys, which some laptops don't have. My device, my Alienware, was really good. It was reliable. It never gave up on me, although it finally died, or to be more specific, it was murdered by my wife, who dropped a full glass of Coca-Cola into it. But I gamed a lot on it, and it never gave up on me. But in terms of reliability, the Razer Blade is very reliable right now as a brand. If you do your research, most repair shops can agree that Razer Blade is one of the best. Feels more premium than all the others. It's a fantastic laptop. It does come at a cost though. It's more expensive than others, sometimes much more expensive than others. You can buy a laptop with the same specs for at least $600 less. But we're not here to talk about Razer Blade. Let's go to the next part of history, which is the history of handhelds. Well, they kind of started at the end of the 70s and progressed. In '89, the Game Boy came out, but at some point they became less and less popular. They were very interesting though. They were very portable. You could just put them in the pocket. You could just pull them out, play, put them back in, and go about your day. I don't think you can do this with this guy right here. For many years, there were very few options. There was the PSP, the Nintendo Switch, and then there was this guy right here. I don't know how many people know what this guy is, but this is an NVIDIA Shield. Now it's called NVIDIA Shield Portable because the tablet came out and they had to name it something different. Now this doesn't feel cheap. I mean, everything feels great, the buttons, but it's not a standalone device. You can't play games on it. You can stream games from your computer on this device. And it was kind of expensive. I don't remember exactly what it cost, but it was kind of considered a failure. I remember the only thing that bothered me, and I didn't want to play on it, it was the screen. It was very small. I mean, some people like to play on their phones. I consider this screen to be too small. But it was an interesting device. Eventually, the NVIDIA Shield became a device for streaming on your TV. This guy comes off. I don't remember the reason why. I think you could change. Yeah, you could change it. I think they were trying to make accessories for it or something. Well, it's a piece of history here. And right now in 2023, it seems like everyone wants to make a handheld. Asus, Lenovo, everyone wants to compete. But today's competitor, it's not new to the game. What if you could have your handheld device, light, portable, and your gaming laptop, that you could just use it as a regular laptop from time to time when you want to, and put it into one device? Well, you can. And it's this guy, the GPD WIN MINI, the tiniest laptop I've ever seen. I know some people got their hands on it, but I'm not one of them. I'm not that privileged. It has not been released yet. I don't even think it has a release date yet. But we have a lot of information on it, and we're gonna discuss it because this is a great device, I think. So let's go to their website and check out their presentation. So this is their official website. The presentation looks well enough put together to understand what this device is capable of. It also has a lot of photos. At a first glance, the GPD WIN MINI does look like a very tiny laptop, but it is advertised as a gaming handheld console. And it is in fact both, but trying to be both could result in not being any of them. And that's something that happens a lot these days with devices. They're either trying to be everything, or they're trying to just be slightly better versions than their competitors, instead of trying to be original. But the GPD WIN is original. There's no one out there with the same design. So let's look at the features. So the first important thing we see is this feature. I don't know why is it such a small font, because I think this is very important. The weight is only 520 grams, which is quite a bit lighter than the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck. The device has some detachable grips at the bottom, but I don't think they add or take away from the weight. They're just there for comfort. They don't have any other purpose, so they might even be hollow. But back to the features. We have two options for processors, the 7640U and the 7840U, which are similar to the Z1 and Z1 Extreme respectively, that the ROG Ally uses. But since these are laptop processors, they have a limited range of power usage, ranging from 15 to 30, while the Z1 version can be used with lower power consumption, from 9 watts to 30, which is a broader range. The GPD WIN MINI has a 7-inch display, 1080p resolution, and a 120Hz refresh rate, which is exactly the same as the ROG Ally. The microSD card slot doesn't catch on fire, unlike the ROG Ally, so this is a good feature, and it is located far away from the heatsink and the fan. There are different options for storage. We have only 2 options here, but other websites claim they're gonna have 3 options. Also, the RAM memory is gonna have different options, but you have the options to go as high as 64 GB of RAM. The battery has slightly higher capacity than the ROG Ally at 44.24 watts-hour. What I think they mean by 50% longer battery life is the capacity of this battery is twice higher than a battery of the same size. So they are referring to size, not capacity, but they make it sound that way. They also have support for 65 watts fast charging like the ROG Ally, and they have an option for an external GPU. The connection has 63 GB per second effective bandwidth, which is the same as the ROG Ally, but the connection is PCIe Gen 4 instead of Gen 3 that the ROG Ally has with the ROG XG Mobile. This might not have any impact right now, but who knows in the future. Of course, has Windows 11 like the ROG Ally, but has something that no other handheld has, which is a backlit keyboard, tiny but capable, and it's a full keyboard. So let's scroll down in the presentation. We can see the ergonomic grips talked about, they are detachable. And next thing we see is some benchmarks in some of the popular games. The testing environment says the Ryzen 7 7840U, 16GB RAM, the 1TB version at 1080p resolution. In the games that have FSR available, the option is probably on. So these on the screen are all the benchmarks. Moving on, they talk about the screen, which is the same as the ROG Ally in terms of features, of course, and some technical specifications of each of the processors and the difference between the two. Now we'll talk about the prices later on, but to my knowledge, the version that has this processor, which is comparable to the Z1 Extreme that the ROG Ally has, it's $100 more than the ROG Ally. Although I could be mistaken, and that version has a 1TB SSD, which will justify the price. But don't worry, we'll check all the prices later. They go on and talk about the RDNA 3 architecture, and how it outperforms the 1660 Ti by 60%, and some other benchmarks comparing the two processors with other two processors. In this section, they talk about how capable this processor is when emulating PS3 games. Now finally, some information on the RAM memory. We see two options here, but some websites again, they claim they're gonna have 64 GB available as an option. The memory has the same clock speed as the ROG Ally, LPDDR5, and that's all we can talk about the memory. The storage options are very high speed SSDs, and it is expandable. I know nothing about joysticks, but they go on and talk about how their joysticks can prevent some of the regular issues that you can encounter, like dead zones, drifting. The triggers are linear analog for smooth acceleration and precision, and they have programmable macro keys. The device has a backlit keyboard and a big tracking pad, perfect for navigating windows. And the fact that the design allows you typing with both thumbs is great, and the trackpad supports up to 4-finger gestures. The built-in speakers are 7.1 channel surround sound, but they don't have Dolby Atmos like the ROG Ally. The device has support for third-party graphics card docks with USB 4 interface that has a bandwidth of 40 GB per second, native support for Thunderbolt 3 protocol, but they also have the option for a much higher bandwidth interface with an Oculink female port using this specific device. So at the bottom of the page, we have all the specs. Now what is left to do is compare the prices between the options that they are offering. So apparently the device is crowdfunded. But let's actually check their crowdfunding campaign. $1,000 for 32 GB, 2 TB, highest performing processor. $699 for the lowest performing processor, 16 GB, 512 GB storage. $728 for the lowest performing processor, 16 GB, 512. $869 highest performing processor, 32 GB, 512 GB. As you can see, we have a lot of options. I don't know what those websites are talking about. They might be referring to what they're actually going to release as retail, probably. The most powerful one, $1,178. Highest performing processor with 64 GB of RAM and 2 TB storage. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 options. I don't know if they added this recently or those pages are not up to date on the prices and options, but these are the options you have. So the GPD WIN is an amazing device. And I think it is priced fairly in the crowdfunding campaign. The retail prices seem a little too much. But in the months to come, obviously we'll see more about this device, more real-life benchmarks, real performance tests, and we'll see if this device is worth the price. But it is something I will be looking after. It has a great design, great ideas, the potential for greatness. So that's it for this video. If I missed something or there's something new, an update, let me know in the comments. Like the video if you liked it. If you didn't, dislike, do what you like. Bye.